Congratulations on your recent appointment as a pre-arrangement counselor with Security National Life's Pre-Need Division. With this appointment, you offer a very important opportunity to help someone help their family at one of the most difficult times during anyone's life. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to view this short and important sales training video. What you're going to see seems quite simple, but its content has been developed and fine-tuned over many years. Now, even though we can't guarantee your sales success, you will find that carefully following this process will give you the greatest opportunity to succeed. The process we call the diagram of a sale consists of 8 parts, and it is this principle that we build our sales process upon. They are the contact, the appointment, the warm-up, the gift of love, the presentation, overcoming objections, the close, and finally, the contract. Think of the diagram of a sale as a ladder with each step, starting from the bottom, a necessary step to reach the next with the contract on the top rung. Let's take a moment to look at each step, how they relate to each other, and are a necessary part of the process. The first step in the diagram of a sale is the contact, probably one of the most important parts. Without a contact, you have no opportunity to sell. Now, we define contact as anyone you have talked to about setting an appointment. This method can come via the telephone, door-to-door, a returned mailer, a seminar, extended family service, or any other lead generation technique. Now, watch as I take you through the process of making a contact.
Hello.
Hi, Mrs. Jones. My name is Susan with XYZ Funeral Home. Can I take just a minute of your time?
Okay.
Thank you. I'll keep this brief. I work with the owner here at the funeral home, and we're calling some folks in your area and telling them about a service that we provide. We have a gift of love program where we're gathering that same information the funeral home is going to be needing someday. Now, of course, we know what a difficult time it is when you lose somebody. So what we've been doing is getting with folks like yourself and gathering that same information ahead of time under normal circumstances when it's easier for everyone. Then, once we have this information, we keep it on file here at the funeral home. It's been our experience that by doing something now, it really does save the family from making a lot of tough decisions later on. So the reason I'm calling you is because I'm going to be right there in your neighborhood today, tomorrow, and on Wednesday, helping some other families gather their information, and I was just checking to see when would be a good time to sit down with you folks for a short visit. Now, is there just yourself, or is there also a Mr. Jones?
There's a Mr. Jones.
Okay. Are you working folks, or are you retired?
My husband's retired and I work part-time.
If your contact works during the day, you might take a slightly different approach and try to set the appointment after 5 p.m. If your contact is a couple, you should always try to select a time when both individuals are available. Now, is there a better time to catch both of you? Like, would in the afternoon be better, or would it have to be after 5?
Probably after 5.
Great. I'm going to be right there in your neighborhood tomorrow evening at 5 anyway. So I was just checking to see if that would be convenient for the two of you.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
That sounds great. Do you have a pen or pencil handy?
Oh, I could get one. Hold on just a minute. Oh, okay.
My name is Susan with XYZ Funeral Home, and I look forward to meeting the two of you tomorrow evening at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and mark that on my calendar, and if you'll mark it on your calendar, that'd be great.
Okay, I got it.
Thanks, Mrs. Jones. I look forward to meeting you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. As with any sales process, you may receive some objections as you close your appointment. Don't worry, that occurs occasionally, but we have developed some very successful responses to those objections. Watch as we hear and respond to some of the more common ones.
Are you trying to sell burial insurance?
No, actually, I was calling about our Gift of Love program. But if you'd like some information about burial insurance, I'd be happy to provide you with that information. We have a Gift of Love program where we're gathering that same information the funeral home is going to be needing.
Are you trying to sell me a prepaid funeral?
We have that program available if that's something you're interested in. But the purpose of my call is our Gift of Love. We have a Gift of Love program.
You know, why don't you call me back?
Oh, I will be glad to. But just so I understand, does it make sense to have this information on file to help your family? One important reminder, the purpose of the contact is to set an appointment, not to sell.
Well, let me talk to my husband about this.
I understand, Mrs. Jones, but does this make sense to you to have this information on file?
Okay.
Great. What I'd like to do with your permission is I'm going to be in your neighborhood anyway, and what I'd like to do is tentatively set up a time, maybe around 5 o'clock tomorrow night. And what I will do is leave you my name and number, and if that isn't convenient, you can call me back. Is that fair enough? You sound like me. Catch yourself coming and going. What I'd like to do is, with your permission, drop by sometime if I happen to see your car in the driveway. I can show you what we're doing, and if you have a few minutes, I can actually help you fill out this information. Now, would that be fair enough? Oh, I understand, Mrs. Jones. I would be happy to call you back. But what I would like to do with your permission, I'm going to leave you my name and number, and if something comes up, you can give me a call. Would that be fair enough? Never call back to confirm an appointment. That simply gives them an opportunity to change what you've already accomplished. Regardless of the effort, a contact is someone who is willing to listen and hopefully set an appointment. As odd as it may seem, it is imperative that you remain focused on this 8-step process. And the next step of the process is step 2, the appointment, the only goal from step 1.
Hi.
Hi, Mrs. Jones. I'm Susan.
It's nice to meet you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. So you've developed a contact in step 1, set up an appointment in step 2, which takes us to step 3, the warm-up. This occurs as you enter your appointment's house. The warm-up is an important step for 2 reasons. First, it gives you approximately 20 minutes to spend with the prospects in a non-selling environment, and this is the time to spend building a rapport with your prospect. Notice the pictures on the wall, any hobbies they might have, their devotion to family. Pay attention to what they say to you. This 20-minute investment is to see how comfortable they are with you as a person and if they perceive you as trustworthy. The second reason is because it gives you a chance to get some insight into your prospect's life. It's amazing what people will tell a complete stranger. Be empathetic and listen to them. This is your time to mine information for later. I want to remind you that this is not a selling phase. This is a getting to know you phase. That's why we call it the warm-up. Also keep in mind that this is usually done in a den or a family room. In fact, I had one prospect call it her nest, and that's where she felt safe and comfortable, sitting in her chair and he in his. I would also recommend that as your 15 to 20-minute warm-up phase comes to a close, you stand up and ask the prospects if you can move to the kitchen table where you'll have something hard to write on. Now, this is a psychological statement of playtime is over and now we need to do business. After you move to the kitchen table, you might remember to not sit between the prospects. Divide and conquer is not our goal here. Also, try and sit by the wife. Unfortunately, statistics tell us that there are many more widows than widowers, so she is the one you will need to build a coalition with during this step. Step 4, our gift of love. The gift of love is what, up to this point, you've been promising your prospect, and it is a wonderful gift. I hope you've filled out the gift of love for yourself and for your own family. You'll notice that the gift of love is built in segments or block sections. This is to help remind you to keep both parties involved. Complete the first section for the female prospect, then repeat the process for the male prospect. Do this on all portions of the gift of love until you reach the last section listed funeral service instruction and information. This should be completed with both prospects at the same time. We're trying to reinforce the idea that these decisions should be made together. This will be a common theme throughout the last portion of the gift of love and the entire sales presentation. Helping your prospect fill out the significant information required in the gift of love will help them with the information the funeral home will eventually need. It helps the prospect gain trust in you and allows you to broach the difficult subject of death, which is the topic of Step 5, the presentation. Have you ever heard us use the phrase, helping you help your family at the funeral home? I realize it's a simple statement, but to us it means more than you or your family could ever imagine. So many times we hear families at the funeral homes ask, "What should I do now?" when they've just lost a loved one. Many times the loss of a loved one or a friend is the most difficult time any of us will ever face. That's why helping you help your family is so important to us. We've learned a lot by watching grieving families, and we've seen the difference between peace of mind and uncertainty is whether the family knew there was an easier way to face loss. The gift of love we've just completed will help your family face one of the worst days of their lives just a little easier. Also, you need to pay attention that you keep control of the presentation book at all times. If you hand it to your prospects, then you've lost control of the sales scenario, and therefore your ultimate goal, the pre-need funeral contract, is in jeopardy. If you don't mind, I'd like to ask you a few questions. If we had not put all of your information, wishes, and arrangements in our gift of love today, and something happened to either of you tonight, who would have been forced to make your funeral arrangements tomorrow?
No.
Who would have to provide information for the death certificate and obituary information? Who would
I don't know.
And who would have arranged for the cemetery memorials?
Probably the kids.
I don't know if you know this, but when there's been no planning or preparation and a death occurs in any family, that family is faced with 30 to 40 major decisions that have to be made in a very short period of time. Things such as deciding on the type of burial, filing the necessary papers. As you can imagine, there was a lot of paperwork and answering all of the telephone calls. Providing a family history, which we've begun today. Preparing the death certificate. Selecting cemetery property, arranging the service, and choosing pallbearers. They're selecting cemetery memorials and arranging for the vault. Mr. and Mrs. Jones, the list goes on and on. But to us, most of the time, the worst decision that any family will ever have to face is when they have to meet at the funeral home, wander through that selection room, and that's the day you will have to pick out a casket for your spouse, or someday those kids have to pick out a casket for mom or dad. Too many times we hear kids spending with their hearts by saying, it's the last thing we can do for mom or dad, instead of being able to think through this time. When we were filling out the gift of love earlier, you told me you had been married for 38 years. If your wedding was anything like mine, it didn't just happen. Now, Mr. Jones, you probably just showed up when you were supposed to, and Mrs. Jones did all the planning. But that's where your family started. And as the years passed, children came, and babies don't come with books. You had to raise those kids according to your own moral values. Then some more time passed and retirement came, and I guess you know by now that it doesn't just happen. It takes planning and it takes teamwork. All those years together planning, doing just what we've been talking about today. So many times we ask families what we could have done to make the loss of a loved one more bearable. And it seems the most common answer we hear is, if they had only planned ahead. We realize at the funeral home that unfortunately we will be meeting one day. Don't know who it's going to be, but I do think it will probably be the first time that either of you will have to make some major decisions without each other. Statistically speaking, a husband dies 8 out of 10 times before his wife. And what we see more often than not is that the widow has to face this time alone. If you think about it, anytime you go to church or a nursing home or a senior citizens facility, you always see more widows than widowers. With that being said, it has been our experience that the best way to take care of difficult decisions like these is ahead of time, just like we're doing today. Remember, helping you help your family. And by planning ahead of time and under normal circumstances, two things occur. First, for your remaining years, there is peace of mind in knowing that these decisions have been made. Second, and most importantly, as I mentioned earlier, you can have comfort in knowing you made these plans together. Now, I don't mean to pry, but have you ever had to make funeral arrangements?
Yeah, my dad.
Her dad.
And do you know how much an average funeral is today?
Well, it says 5,500.
That was about that, yeah.
Well, that's close. But the average cost of a funeral today is $8,000. Now, at XYZ Funeral Home, our records show us that over the past 30 years, the average funeral has nearly doubled about every 12 years. What that means to all of us is that what 2 funerals cost today could easily be what 1 costs in a few years. If you think about it, though, it's just like a ticket to the movies or a gallon of gas. Who would have ever thought gas or the movies could be so expensive? Do you know how a funeral home comes up with the price of a funeral?
No.
No.
No idea.
Now, this is the general price list at XYZ Funeral Home, and it itemizes everything we do. I'm going to leave this with you for today so you can have it for your records, but if you don't mind, I'd like to make a few notes on the back. The way we come up with the price of a traditional funeral is usually broken into 3 parts: a traditional funeral service, and of course a casket, and vault. I've got all those words placed right there. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, the first part in the price of a traditional funeral is, of course, a traditional funeral service. What this includes is the initial transportation of the deceased, whether it's from home, hospital, or a nursing home, use of the preparation room, embalming, dressing, and for the ladies' cosmetics, our funeral director and their staff, use of our facilities, a parlor for visitation as you requested, and the chapel for the funeral service itself. Transportation, a hearse, a lead car for the pastor, family car for your family, and a utility van. What the utility van does is it takes the flowers from the funeral home to the cemetery and makes what we call the setup, which is the tent, chairs, lowering device for the final word of prayer and committal service. It also includes the guest register for friends and family to sign in and the thank you cards the family will need after the funeral. This also includes the boutonnieres for the pallbearers and the clergy. Mr. and Mrs. Jones, our goal is to take care of everything so there is nothing left for your family, and at XYZ Funeral Home, we do all of this for only $3,500. Now, because there's 2 of you, I'm going to put this on both sides of the service. So I'm going to put $3,500 here and $3,500 here. Now, the second part in the price of a traditional funeral is a casket. Now, we've got over 20 caskets on display, but they basically break down to 3 types. Semi-precious metals like bronze and copper. Those families who often want the best often choose a bronze or copper casket. Of course, then we have wood caskets, and I think families choose a wood casket because of its warmth and beauty. And then we also have steel caskets. Just going to let you take a look at some of these. The first casket I'd like to show is a bronze casket. And as I said earlier, families who often want the best often choose a bronze or copper casket. It offers the ultimate in protection. This one is called the Wings of an Angel. It is a 48-ounce solid bronze casket with a velvet interior, and the price on this casket is $9,000. You should pause here and count to 2 silently. Turn the page and show the next casket. The next casket I'd like to show you is a copper casket. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, copper offers the same protection as bronze, but at about half the price. This is a copper casket. It's made of 32-ounce copper with a velvet interior. When I think of copper casket, I think of a penny you might find on the sidewalk that's been there for 2 months or 2 years. But if you pick it up, polish it off, it's just as nice as the day it was made. And I think that's the beauty of copper. The price on this copper casket is $4,500. Again, count to 2 silently. Show the next casket. The next casket I'd like to show you is a wood casket. Now, a week doesn't go by that someone doesn't say, just throw me in an old pine box. I like to tell them that old pine has gotten mighty expensive these days. Think of a wooden casket as a fine piece of furniture. You're paying for the type of wood. It's hand rubbed, hand carved, and hand polished. I also want to point out that because of the sheer nature of wood, it offers no protective qualities. Now, the first casket I'd like to show you is one of the more popular ones. You'll notice the attention to detail. It's a solid mahogany wood casket with a velvet interior, and this casket is priced at $6,000.
That's kind of like my dad's.
Yeah, more expensive. Yeah.
Pause for a couple of moments, but do not show the next casket. Then the next casket I'd like to show you is the cherry casket. Again, it's made of solid cherry, and it also has a nice velvet interior. It's a very beautiful casket, and I hope you noticed all the attention to detail. The price of this casket is $3,500. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, I want you to pay close attention to the next two caskets. These are our middle-of-the-road caskets, and they are probably more often chosen than any of our other caskets. You should pause here and count to 2 silently. Turn the page and show the next casket. These are our stainless steel caskets. This is the his and her version. They are both made identical, both made of stainless steel with a velvet interior. When I think of the stainless steel, I think of pots and pans and kitchen sinks, something that will never rust or corrode. These caskets are both priced at $3,000. Let me ask you a question. You wouldn't want anything more elaborate than these caskets, would you?
No.
No.
This is, I think this is.
Most families say the same thing. So, we've got a $3,500 service and $3,000 for the casket. Okay. The third part of a traditional funeral is a vault. Now, the vault is not a state law, but some cemeteries require them. And what a vault does is, maybe you've gone to an old cemetery before and you've seen where the ground is sunken in above the grave. Well, what happens is that over time, the sheer weight of the earth collapses that grave. What a vault does is not only protect the casket from the weight of the earth, but also from the elements as well. Now, we've got vaults that range from $1,000 to $10,000. They are all basically made the same, all out of reinforced concrete, and they all seal. The only difference is what they are lined with and the color. So let me ask you a question. Would you want any more than the least expensive vault?
No.
So underneath the vault, I think $1,000. And the total cost of the funeral you've selected is $15,000. At XYZ Funeral Home, we have put together a program that is a part of our gift of love that I'm really excited about. They give it a fancy name. They call it Advanced Funeral Planning, but I call it Pre-Need, which you might already be familiar with. This program allows your family to freeze the funeral price you selected today, regardless of any future price increases. The price will never go up again. Families tell me all the time what a great program it is, and I'm sure you agree. The only decision we haven't made today is what is going to fit best in your budget to make sure the payment is comfortable for you. A lot of folks are from what I call the old school, and they don't like to owe anybody for anything. Those folks simply pay the balance in full and never have to worry about it again. For those of you who can do this, it's a great way to have it taken care of, and that may be the way you'd like it to be handled. So number one, the first option is paying in full, the $15,000. For those like me who want or need the option to pay this over a period of time and would also like some protection in case something happens to them before it is completely paid for, we offer our Family Protection Plan. In addition to freezing the price of your funeral today, there are several additional and important benefits. First, you have accidental death coverage from day one. Second, by answering a few simple health questions, you might have the ability to be completely covered immediately. But regardless of your health, in just 2 short years, you are fully protected. And finally, because we believe in this so much, by doing this today, the Family Protection Plan covers each and every child, grandchild, and great-grandchild you have at no cost. Remember, helping you help your family. If you prefer to take care of your obligations monthly over a 5-year or 60-month period, the cost would be $312.02 per month, or over 8 years, you might have a more affordable payment of $238.42. This price is for the both of you for both funeral services. Once again, you would have all the benefits I told you about earlier: the frozen price, insurance coverage, possibly from day one, and our Family Protection Plan that covers all the kids. Families tell me all the time what a great program this is. I realize we've talked a lot about money, and that is always a consideration. What you're doing today will not only help your family not have to worry about the difficult decisions we've talked about earlier, but will also help your family not have to worry about how they're going to pay for that funeral on the worst day of their life. But that's not the main reason families prearrange their services. The main reason families prearrange and prepay their funerals is the peace of mind that comes in knowing that they have helped their family get through one of the worst days of their lives just a little easier. Let me ask you one last question. Which one of these 3 ways is going to fit best with your budget so we can help you help your family today? You've just given your prospect an awful lot to think about in a very deliberate presentation. Now, most people haven't given their funeral that much thought, so you can expect to have some objections or pushback on your presentation. That is to be expected, which is why we have identified it as step 6 in our process, overcoming objections. Watch closely, if you will, as I address some of the most common objections.
I just don't think we can afford it.
We just don't make quick decisions.
I understand, but other than the money, is there any reason why you wouldn't want to take care of this?
Well, I have insurance.
I understand, and I want to congratulate you. That is wonderful. In this day and time, you can't afford not to have insurance, and you have obviously tried to protect your family. But what we have found is that when you die, the expenses for your surviving spouse are going to keep going. The utility bills keep coming, food bills still have to be paid, medical expenses are still necessary. By taking care of your pre-arrangement needs, it makes your insurance that much more valuable. But just so I understand, which one of these ways is going to fit best into your budget to know that everything is taken care of?
Well, we need to think about it.
Yeah, we do.
I understand. I know it's a big decision. But if you think about it, only 2 things apply. First, are we going to need it? And second, can we afford it? Are we going to need it? We talked all afternoon that this is something that everyone needs. The only thing is, can we afford it? Let me ask you a question. Can you afford not to do it? And just so I understand, which one of these ways is going to fit best into your budget to know that everything is completely taken care of? If you have adequately addressed the prospect's concerns or objections in step 6, you are now ready to move on to step 7, the close. We train a 3-option close, meaning the prospect is offered 3 different ways to pay for their prearranged funeral. Keep in mind there are many different ways to pay for a prepaid funeral. But our belief is that the options need to be limited. Otherwise, the prospect will have difficulty making a decision. It is important to note that often an objection occurs after you start the close. So you may have to address objections during the close step.
Oh, before we do anything, we need to talk to our kids.
Yeah, yeah.
I understand. I totally understand. But if your son or daughter called you right now and asked you to help him or her plan his or her funeral, how would that make you feel?
Too bad.
Yeah, it would be good.
I'm sure it would just about kill you, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
You know, if you feel that way about planning your son or daughter's funeral, how do you think they're going to feel about planning yours?
Probably not very good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
After you overcome each objection, it is imperative that you deliver the 3-option close to the prospect. This could be a repetitive process, overcoming the objection and delivering the close to the prospect again. Once you've overcome the objections and offered the 3-option close, be quiet. The first person that talks loses the game. So, just so I understand, are any of these figures going to put a hardship on you financially?
Yeah. No,
Probably not.
not really.
And let me ask you the question again. Which one of these 3 ways is going to fit best in your budget so we can help you help your family today?
I'd say the 8 years,
Yeah, the 238.42.
number 3.
Step 8 is the contract and the conclusion of the process. This is the last phase of the diagram of a sale, and during this time, I cannot stress to you enough the importance of the prospect to understand what they are buying and how they will be paying for it. This should be a cordial, pleasant transaction during which the prospects see value and benefit in the prepaid funeral, and most importantly, see how it protects their family not only from having to make a difficult decision on one of the worst days of their life, but also how it will make sure that their family will not have that financial burden during this very difficult time. During this phase, as you complete the contract and collect payment, ask the prospects to complete the agent evaluation form. This serves two purposes. First, if you have done your job right, you will receive positive responses to the questions that evaluate your performance, knowledge, and effort. And secondly, it also acts as a referral guide to garner leads of other families to see, and that they were given to you from a satisfied customer. Congratulations, you have just completed your first virtual sale and helped another family help their family.